So how did you go about, wow! That was really impressive, actually. Hey guys, it's Christine, and today we're doing something that I've never done before, and that is an artist interview. So Krishna Feeney is a singer-songwriter based here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I've been following her for the past year, and I've seen her play live with her band Greenway North, and I've just always been so in awe of her voice and her songwriting. She just released her first debut solo album this past week, and I love it. I got the chance to sit down with her and talk about the album, but also her songwriting process and the process of recording and creating this album on her own, and all of the hard work. Also the struggles of wanting to pursue music as an artist, but also have a stable life. We talk about this a little bit, but I did create this channel originally around country music, but it turns out that Americana might be a better descriptor for a lot of the music that I like and have already talked about. If you like any of the stuff I've talked about previously, like Gabe Lee, Charles Wesley Godwin, Ian Note, Emily Scott Robinson, her album is kind of in a similar vibe. Just a heads up that there's a little bit of background noise in the first 5 minutes, and then we had a kitten on the loose, so there might be some like kitten surprise appearances / noises, but we welcome all animals on this channel. Alright, without further ado, here's the interview.
I was listening to we're watching your top 10 country tunes thing, and your first lead up into thinking about like, how do you even classify?
Yeah.
And then I found myself thinking about that more while driving home. Because today at work, I picked like a random Spotify playlist because like, I don't know, none of my playlists looked right. And I was like, wow, it's like offering all this weird stuff. So let me just click on like, I tried like wild country, and I tried
that was so trashy.
And I was like, no, they didn't sound like country. Like I had this moment where I was like, wow, do I not know what country music is?
Oh my gosh.
Because they don't sound like country music.
That is
they sound like
the genre's biggest debate.
And I'm okay with that. Like, I'm actually not that much for like classification, but then I was thinking about how you said that your most listened to item is Americana.
Yeah, it was.
And that you don't even know what that is, and that's what I always call myself, because I don't know what Americana is either. And I hate when people ask me what genre of music I play, I get really like, I'm not sure how to answer, and I fall back on Americana. I'm like, oh, I don't know, like Americana, I guess.
Yeah.
Or songwriter.
You might be pleased to know that I feel like the stuff on the Wild Country playlist is not the stuff that I really like and resonate with.
Well, I gathered that just from watching.
But in a way, that's what I used to like, like 10 years ago. I kind of got into country through pop country.
Your gateway
it was kind of like gateway.
That's cool. That's a good way to look at it. Yeah.
So I'm curious, how long have you been writing songs?
That's a great question. Not that long, really, in any sort of committed fashion. I've played music since I was young, teenager pretty much. I picked up guitar when I was like 15, and I had dabbled in other things, not very well. I dabbled in writing some terrible songs when I was like 17, you know, like most people who play an instrument, wrote some real bad songs in their late teens, and I never really shared them with anybody. I didn't write anything for 10 or 15, probably 15 years. Then I dabbled in a little more songwriting when I was on maternity leave for the first time. I wrote like a ridiculous number of kids' tunes, which I would just sing to Helen, but I, again, didn't really take it very seriously. It was really about 2.5 years ago that I changed that. I was at a music camp, and I decided I was going to take a songwriting workshop while I was there. And just on like the third day of camp or whatever, we were in the workshop. It was with Cozy Sheridan, that's her name, and she's an awesome songwriter. She gave like some prompts and was like, okay, everybody take these prompts and go off for 15 minutes and just come back in 15 minutes and share what you had. And for whatever reason, I went off with this prompt and came back with a entirely complete from beginning to end song in 15 minutes, and that's the first song on the album.
No way!
And so that was like the third day of a week-long camp, and I made a commitment while I was there. I make New Year's resolutions on an academic calendar because I'm an educator, so it was August, and I made this commitment that I was gonna try to write more. That year I was going to try to write a song every week, and I was going to immediately record them on completion and post them to YouTube, so I couldn't pretend that they had never happened.
Cool.
So I made this ridiculous personal commitment out of nowhere after not sleeping for a week. And then I wrote 60 songs between August and August. So I wrote more than a song a week.
That's
some
incredible.
weeks I wrote 30, some weeks I wrote 0. This is Solomon on camera.
Yay.
When I made that commitment to myself to do it, it was like without judgment, like put them up, good, bad,
Yeah, just put something
terrible,
out there.
and just keep doing it.
How did you go about picking the 10
was
songs
so hard.
to be on this album?
And
I'm
so
curious.
I'm a newbie at album making. This is my first album, and I had a realization very early on that I would have benefited from like a real producer and somebody to like go through and like, because I had realized that I wasn't always the best judge of which ones were good and which ones were not. I had some that are on the album that when I initially wrote, I just were like total throwaway. I was like, that's an awful. But I had a few friends I would send them to who were listening, and then a few more people started like listening on my YouTube channel, and I get some comments. But just a handful of like close, trusted people who would listen to most of them and let me know like which ones they liked more. And then there's some that I liked, right? That I was like, I'm pretty sure I want that. And like Roll This Rock might not be the best track on the album, but it was the one. It was important thematically because it was the beginning of this journey. So Wings of Iron is an example. I mean, we'll go through them, but that's an example of one that I thought was a total throwaway song.
Really?
Like, I just thought that was the worst song when I wrote it, and I had sent it to Susie, who you've met, who's in my band Greenway North. And she loved that, I was like, I probably never would have played it again. She's like, what's that one you just did? Can we do that? I want this idea for a harmony.
You know what song I really like that didn't make the album?
Oh, which one?
I think it's the Murder Ballad. The one where it's like his lips are on her knee.
Yeah, the Santa Ana's. Yeah, it is I really like that one. That one I brought home from camp that year later, from the first camp where I started writing it, and I shared that with my husband, who was like, a little bit concerned with my descriptors and of how I would double murder in the case of infidelity.
I'm curious about kind of the recording process.
I did this album completely on my own and funded the whole thing myself with my personal savings and ongoing day job funds, essentially. And it's very expensive process, and I had a GoFundMe that funded like maybe a quarter of the total, which was very helpful. Thanks to all of you who contributed. And the process is really different, and I've never done it before, so it's a huge learning, and there's so many things. I'm going to do everything different next time probably, so it was a really I've been ready to start the next one for like a year, but so a lot of it was fiscally based and who I had access to, but I decided early on that I wanted it to be quality, I wanted it to be professional, and so part of that was hiring certain people to play on it, as well as like making sure that I had like a proper studio, good setup, good support in mixing and back house production, though I don't have a producer, so like there were a lot of decisions that were challenging. And fortunately, like my sound engineer Cam Parridge was like super supportive and super helpful on all those parts. And then I hired Sharon Gilchrist and Chuck Irvin and Joan Miller, who are professional. Sharon does a lot of production, and in the process of being in the studio and practicing songs, she had a lot of really great suggestions in terms of how we arranged things in recording, and so did Joe. So I had some support from people with more experience, and I picked those folks because I could get them partially, right? Like, so I did pay for their services, but they don't say yes to everything, and like, so I've encountered Chuck and Sharon and Joe at various like music camps and other spaces, and so they were willing to like give their time to a project, like a small project like mine, and I think they enjoyed it. And everything was live except for the drums, the backup vocals, and then there's like a fiddle on one and a dobro on another. Like, those are the only things tracked in. So everything was recorded live in a room, like with not a lot of separation between instruments and just a bunch of takes. So we spend about an hour on each song, do 6 or 7 takes to the click track, and then pick the best one.
I think what I really like about the way it sounds is that it sounds really authentic. Like, you feel like you're in the room. It doesn't sound like overly produced.
Well, it's not very produced. So that's perfect. I'm glad you like that. Yeah. Considering it's like the first try and the first project, that I'm happy with it. And that's a big sentence. There were times in the midst of the project where I was like, I had moments where I was like, wow, I'm never going to be happy with this. I'm going to have to I have to become okay with it not being as good as I know it could be because of all of these factors, money, because of my own amateurness, like I can hear it. My own skills don't necessarily always match up to what I know it can sound like. Yeah. But when all said and done, and with some time to think about those things and really reflect on that, and then just a lot of time working on it and making it as good as we could with what we had to work with, I feel good about it. And that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Some of the overarching themes that I noticed throughout your songs: longing, sadness, loss, desire, and fantasy.
Oh, that pretty much covers it, doesn't it?
So, do you write your songs from personal experience?
Well, I'd say they're generally fiction, and I think if you don't have some kernel of truth and true connection to something that is real, whether it's real for you or other people, there has to be that piece that's real, right? That makes it meaningful, right? So I don't write stuff that's not meaningful to me. I definitely always write stuff that's meaningful for me. And I'd say that all of the songs on the album have some kernel of truth that's true for me. It's not just, then I definitely utilize all whatever else I need to get there. But I feel like I've essentially just been in the midst of a musical midlife crisis for many years. And that first year was a very intense realization while I was at this camp, and then continuing to write a huge amount all the time, and this realization that I didn't really care about anything except for playing and singing and writing songs, and that so a lot of it is really channeling this angst between reality and what I'd like to be doing, right? Which is still very real, right? Which is that I'm a realistic person, and even if the opportunity existed for me to pursue music, it's a highly unlikely possibility, and it's not I like what I do for a living is important, good work. But I really had some moments there where I was I care about music more than anything, to the exclusion of things that I shouldn't exclude, my children. I was I love my children. Yeah. And I just want to be writing songs. I just want to be writing songs right now. And so there was a real I feel definite sort of midlife crisis around music, and a lot of that comes out in the songs I was writing, which is this is how I'm gonna cope with that, is I'm gonna lay it all out and write a lot of songs about wanting to run away and things that are a long way away that you can have. There's all sorts of themes that will pop up, and most of them I could bring back to struggles around professional struggles around having hard some very challenging. It was a really challenging year at work that I had that year, actually, too. Extremely challenging.
And I imagine your job is really challenging.
It is, and that year was a particularly tough year, and then I ended up moving to another job after that year. So some of that was professional crises, and but really it's just this really intense need for the music in my life that I find ways to, I find time and space, and my family's super supportive and amazing. And they support me finding that time and space to do that, but it's an ongoing struggle and wonder of I live in the Bay. I'm a homeowner in the Bay Area with 2 kids, with a daycare bill that costs as much as our house, and Yeah, so I'm a little financially trapped, and I wish I could just quit my job and write songs.
Yeah.
And I don't even really care that much about playing them out.
In your process, do you start with lyrics or melody, or neither, or both?
I think I'm more melody driven. I write down random things that people say or that I hear, other song lyrics. I like steal from any old place, and I write things out of context, often in my phone or whatever. And then like if I'm playing my guitar, I'm messing around. I'm very melody driven, so I'll sit down with the intent to practice something and then I almost never do that. I almost always start lose track of what I was supposed to be doing and start goofing off and saying random somethings that sometimes the whole song will start with just a random, like I wrote a song where I had a melody pop in my head while I was peeing. Things happen at weird moments, and like when you're not focused on other things, you're not distracted.
Actually, I read somewhere your mind is most creative when it's idle, and that really resonated with me.
Just gonna let it drift a little bit.
Yeah.
So I was peeing and I had this like melody, and I was not by my guitar, and I was like, okay, I gotta go get my guitar. I gotta go get something to like just hum into. I didn't like have my phone. It was like so I was like, what? And then as I'm like walking to my instrument and something to record with, I was trying to think of a way to make sure I didn't lose my melody that I thought was cool at that moment. And I was like, and I started singing, my mind is blank, and it's the first line of the song, like.
Which song is that?
It's a newer one that we have been playing. It's the hammock song that we've been playing with Greenway North, and it's like, my mind was blank, not a thought I could pin down. That was like how it started.
The interesting thing about art, and this leads to like my final question before we dive into the songs, is that the art that artists create is just, to me, like a combination of everything that you've consumed and mixed in new ways, in brand new ways. So in your case, like what are your musical influences?
Oh,
like
that's so cool. That's a good question.
What did you grow up listening to?
Because I'm like a hot mess on that. I think about it often, especially with the folks that I play with more, because it's been a wide range and a long transition. So, I mean, I grew up like, I don't know, my dad plays guitar, and he played classical guitar when I was little, and he's gone through all these weird genre shifts in my life too. But so like my parents listened to like classical music, and then like the Grateful Dead. I liked classical music weirdly as a child.
Me too. A lot. That's like all I used to listen to.
My first attempts to play music, I wanted to play piano terribly badly when I was 4, and I begged to take lessons, and I used to sit at the piano and pick out the melodies of Ode to Joy and the Fifth Symphony on the piano. Like I wanted to play Beethoven. Like I was real clear. I liked Beethoven, and I wanted to play Beethoven, and I went to lessons, and they wanted me to play Mary Had a Little Lamb, and I quit in like 3 weeks. This music sucks. So I didn't stick with lessons. But so later on, when I got into really playing, I was into Nina Simone and Bessie Smith and like old jazzy blues. Like, so it's not jazz and it's blues, but it's not easy blues. It's hard blues. So I learned like my first guitar playing was some more challenging stuff. As in terms of my playing, it was more blues and jazzy for many years.
Wow.
And so like over the years, like I wasn't into country. I wasn't into old time, or like my gateway drug was probably like to country, like / Americana, bluegrass was probably like Gillian Welch. You know, Gillian Welch comes out, and that's a little more mainstream, and sort of got me into that stuff. And then I kind of got like, I love the murder ballads. That's a whole side note, right?
Yeah.
And the Child's ballads, if you know anything about that, which is like this guy, his last name is Childs. He was a guy who collected all the folk tunes of like over about a 400-year period in the 1800s in the British Islands. So like Ireland, England, and Scotland. So he collected all of these ballads. So a lot of the old Appalachian folk tunes that we have, that they came from the British Isles. Like a lot of those murder ballads came from there, and they were like, cautionary tales for young girls. Like, don't walk out at night. Don't get knocked up, because your parents and your boyfriend will decide to kill you. But there's this whole history piece that's fun there that I am interested in still, and I can fall down that rabbit hole. Yeah, so like then I just found myself around people. Like if you want to play with people, so here's what happened, right? Like I can play all these great tunes, but they're not easy to play with people who don't know them already. And like for me, the thing that's most wonderful about music is playing music with other people, and not for performance, but for connection.
Yeah,
it's a connection that doesn't exist in any other. It's a different connection than any other connection you've had with people. Like it can be confusing even. Like it can be really intimate and uncomfortable and amazing. And like you can be with a stranger having this really intensely intimate moment, like at a distance through music.
Yeah.
And so like, in order to be able to play with people, I ended up like I wanted to play with people. I started to play with people more, and like people can't play those. So I would just start to like learn to play some of the things that other people would play. And I was like, oh, I can bring a Gillian Welsh song. People can play those. Like things with 3 or 4 chords are easier.
Yeah.
And like, so that's a way to connect with people, and a lot of the people I've ended up hanging out around were more Americana and like a little bit more, and that's like over the years it's actually like leaned towards like more bluegrassy folks who are like, everybody likes to play a little better than them, and like the people I know who are like really good are like, they're playing a lot of bluegrass. I still try to branch that out and play with lots of different people.
Yeah.
I do love how songs can just have lots of different connections for people, and like I think that's what's really interesting about it, and interesting for me about the length of time it takes to do a project like this, is that many of the songs have changed a lot for me. This one has been pretty consistent, I think, for me, and this is not one where that happens, though I think it applies to me a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And as I said, it was written, this song, I wrote it in 15 minutes.
That's crazy.
And it came from a really structured prompt. It was like almost like a songwriting game where there were like 3 bowls and you take a little piece of paper from each. Mine was like, one prompt said the second and fourth line of the verses repeat every time. And then there was use the chords of your favorite country song. And then the third was like an actual line, like a lyric line, and it was roll this rock up this hill. Yeah, so I went off, and I think I couldn't think of a country song, and I could think of Bury Me Beneath the Willows, which has like 3 chords. I was like, I'm just gonna do 1-4-1-5 for you music people. I was like, I'm gonna do the simplest chord progression that every song has.
Yeah.
I don't know, I was just like, my heart is weary, my soul's a rock. And that's a little stolen from, Bury Me Beneath the Willows. I think the first line is like, my heart is sad and I am lonesome. And I was like sort of half stealing, right? So I'm like using that as an inspiration. And I was just feeling like I was in a professional space of like struggle, right? And then, I had written in a prompt about like how this grind has ground me. That line was from like a little, and that's just real, right?
Yeah.
Like that's just real for me all the time, right? Like, and you just gotta keep doing it. You just keep going, right? And that, I feel like that's real for people.
I love the way it starts, like the line, everything is brown. Like also the way you sing it, I really, really love that. And then how in the second verse, it's everything is gray. And I think it really paints this picture of like melancholy.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's about letting go of someone who doesn't love you back.
Cool. Like I said, I feel like I was dealing with a lot of like longing for music, and my best metaphor for that is often like a relationship metaphor. It's a good thing my husband's super supportive, because if they do sound like there's like some that are confusing, right? For somebody who's like in a pretty happy relationship. It's more like, I never thought about it as like unrequited. It's not that it's unrequited, it's that it couldn't be voiced in the first place, right? Like I can't let it go, and I also can't even tell you that I'm holding it.
This song is very sensual.
Yes, it's completely clean and not explicit at all, and totally, if you listen too carefully, it'll make you uncomfortable.
I was listening to it and I was like, okay, I could see this being like maybe about like romance, and it's like the long, slow ride of life, you know.
Yeah.
But then
when I'll gig it, I'll attribute it to my spouse, and it's not factual, but there's a lot of pieces in there that are more factual to our relationship and things like that. There's a lot of fiction in there too. Like there was the love at first sight wasn't exactly how that worked out. Right? Like there was a lot of point where we both knew that, but we hadn't said anything, and that like there was active avoidance of physical, like of even accidental physical contact, and some of that's like written into that song. Like that was a real experience between me and my spouse, where there was an active like, nope, I know that I cannot touch you, that I'd best not touch you. Had a minor moment of freak out when I realized it was over 5 minutes long. I have like 2 over 5 minute songs on this album where I was like, they're not supposed to be that long.
Said who?
Said the pop charts and country charts. You never see anything much longer.
Right,
Like 3 to 4
apparently
minutes.
streaming is making all songs overall shorter.
Interesting.
Like, especially in like the pop world.
Yeah, because they tend to be 2.5 minutes. But when you're approaching or you cross 5, you're not radio. They won't play. You know, that's not. They don't play that on the radio. It has to be short. Not like I'm getting radio.
Yet. What I like to think of as an alcoholic's anthem.
Yes, this was written at work.
Oh, really?
100% in my brain with no instrumental ability to sing.
Were you like
out
in
loud.
the middle of like disciplining students, or like
it was a long
staff
day of meeting. It was a long day of IEP meetings, if you know what those are. And I was like having that moment of like, I wish we were in Mad Men, and instead of my fish tank, I could have a bar, and it was okay for everybody to be drinking right now. 'Cause it is 11 a.m. and I have like 7 more hours of this, and I really could use a drink. Like I might really drinking. Like I don't drink that much. I go in and out of it as a professional educator. Most of us do. But this was just a grueling day where I was like, I think I might just I'm just going to really take up drinking. I'm not fucking around. I'm going to take up drinking. Excuse my language. Am I allowed to swear on your YouTube channel?
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't mark it as like kid friendly, so I swear sometimes. Yeah.
Then I won't censor myself too much. But yeah, so I was part bored. Right? A lot of it's part bored because at these meetings there's not much for me to do. I have to listen to the extent, because in moments I'll need to like mediate or moderate potential future legal situations, like make sure that everybody's doing things. But I also, like, most of the time don't even need to pay attention, but I legally have to be sitting in the room. Right. So I'm bored out of my mind.
So you're writing it in your head.
And I wrote it in my head. Wow. Like I had the melody, like some kind of a melody that was pretty similar. There definitely changes happened once I like touched my guitar. There's some minor changes to the melody. And then it was just like I wanted to drink, so I was going to write a song about drinking.
I was imagining it as like you sitting alone at a bar, like thinking about like a lover. I feel like I've never seen so many different types of alcohol in one song.
It might be, yes.
Like you have
it's a little
whiskey,
bit of a cliche,
rye, bourbon, beer, vodka, rum, and tequila.
Cheap tequila.
Yeah, cheap tequila.
It was, a little bit of a cliche for sure, and like part of that was like, that in my mind it was just like a comical endeavor to keep myself busy while having to sit quietly at legal meetings. It's also more of a hats off to like an old country tune, right? Like a 70s drinking song.
Yeah.
Like definitely there's that direct reference.
Yeah, there's a lot of drinking songs in country music.
Yes,
so
there are.
I think you guys will like this.
It's written on my ukulele. I tend to write different things on my ukulele.
I feel like ukuleles always sound happy. Is that just
me? Sometimes, but I'll definitely
you can make it
creepy. I like to write creepy songs on my ukulele.
Okay.
But yeah, it was raining really hard.
Okay.
When I wrote that, it was a fast one, I think. Again, like I didn't spend a lot of time on it, and I spent my high school years in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where we have spectacular thunderstorms, and I really legitimately love a thunderstorm, like a good thunder lightning storm. And we don't really have them here.
We don't.
And it was pouring rain, and there was like a little bit of thunder or something. And, and so that's how it started up.
Cool.
And then I just let them go, kind of, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right?
Like you didn't have like an end plan vision.
No, definitely not. And in a funny way, I would have thrown it out, but the kids really liked it. And so I heard them, like my little one, who was like 4.5 or 5, like singing it in the bathtub one day.
Oh my gosh.
Like by herself.
Oh, are you all the voices in the background?
I'm all the voices.
How many voices is that?
I think I have 4 different oos. So there's an octave and 2 in the middle.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a fun choral. And then the too. The there might only be 3, but there might be 4 too on the bridge part, the humming. That's another ukulele song. That is the first one I wrote on this instrument.
Cool.
I was in a tough spot, so that was January of 2018 or something.
Okay.
And I had to fly to the Pacific Northwest to deal with like a medical emergency with my mom. And I was like up in Bellingham, which is right by the Canadian border, in early January, where it's just dark. So like I was in not an awesome like emotional space. Like, it was like a really hard time. And like all I had with me was my youth. In San Diego visiting my husband's family. It was 80 degrees in San Diego.
I'm from San Diego.
And so I flew we were driving back, and he dropped me at the Long Beach airport, and I flew emergency flight from 80 degrees to 20 degrees. Yeah. And I like lived out of the Fred Meyer for a week. Like I had to buy myself, like with a pair of jeans and like my ukulele, I had to like buy a sweatshirt, and like it was like so I was in a funny spot. It was dark all the time. And like those first mornings where I like get up at like 7:30 and it's like legitimately still dark outside. Like, and it's not that far north. I know it's like crazier other places, but in the context of this whole thing, like kind of it led to this song, you know? And it was like the whole like my heart is full of secret desires and slow burning fires and unwritten songs. Like I felt like I was gonna explode from unwritten songs that I couldn't find. There's that's just something that happens to me sometimes where I feel like I'm like overwhelmed with things that I can't quite put my finger on to get out, and that like I just have to get them out. I'm mad. Yeah. Oh my gosh. What song is next?
West Kentucky Wind is my favorite song.
Oh, yay. Okay.
Yeah, I relate to it a lot.
This is my homage to the NorCal Bay Area.
I really like the sense of place that you create, like with all the imagery, the Golden Gate Bridge and like the hills turning brown to green, and you have Wildcat Canyon Trail, which is right up there. It's close to here, right?
Yeah, it's kind of that way.
Okay.
So it's if you're a Richmond El Cerrito person, it's like unincorporated Richmond, the hill area of Richmond, and like connecting to El Cerrito. So Wildcat Canyon is like up here in the hills behind.
Do you go there
a little bit to the north? No, not a lot, but sometimes.
What?
I just started the shredder and it's gonna freak out.
Oh, that's scary.
Pause. I go running, so sometimes I'll run trails. Not that much. I usually street run, but some of the like stuff is about commuting various directions, running, and just living in this area and like being here.
Yeah.
And then
but at the same time, it's like you have this longing and this desire for West Kentucky.
Yeah. It's funny, I was listening.
Do you have any ties to West Kentucky?
No, not at all. It just fits nice. But I was listening to one of your other YouTube posts, and you talk about a longing for nostalgia for things you've never experienced.
Yes.
It struck me, and I think it very much relates to this song because I also have like this weird longing for all these places that people sing about, and so Kentucky, Tennessee, the Carolinas, Georgia, like all these like places in the South and in Appalachia. So it's kind of about this longing for, like, I know that I'm here. Yeah. I love it here. Yeah. And I'm going to stay here. But this funny longing for places I've never been that people sing about.
Yeah. So I have heard you sing this live with Susie and Patrick.
Yeah.
Are they harmonizing?
They are
background?
on this one now.
Cool.
So they're both on this one, and they're each on many of them, but I think this is the only one that is a straight 3-part with 3 people.
I looked it up, and airplane wings are actually made of aluminum.
I know, they're of iron. I'm aware of that. You know, I said I write down things that people say.
Yeah.
And my husband's stepdad, we had been talking about something, and we were talking about my spouse, my husband, and like he wasn't present at that moment, and he said he just has a whim of iron.
A whim.
And I wrote that down. I was like, whim of iron? What a weird thing to say. And so I had written that down, but then that like I never used that, but like I looked at that moment, and it made like, you know, it turned into wings of iron, like just in a moment of, without no actual thought involved. I mentioned that I'll just like have a melody and I'll sing words. Yeah. Whatever words happen to like I try to not question myself too much, and then I go back and I'll question, and I'll like, once I have a start, I'll like roll with it and be more thoughtful. But in order to get a beginning, sometimes I just like a nonsense. I just say whatever words come out of my mouth without, you try to be a stream of consciousness as possible. And so Wings of Iron came out because I had recently looked at this whim of iron.
I really, really like the line, "Why does it seem with every passing season we all lose a dream?"
Yeah.
It's my favorite line.
Yeah, dark, huh? I was like, this, you know, it was a dark year for me, a hard year for me professionally, and like, and I was having this crisis around just wanting to play music all the time, and really maybe committing myself to music in a way that was super positive in lots of ways, but maybe like not that awesome for other people in my life. I love a cliche, right? So I was like, and it started with like, count your blessings. You need to count. You need to learn your lessons and like count your blessings. And like I was like, I like a rhyme, you know. I love a rhyme. I love a complex rhyme even more. This doesn't have terribly complex rhymes in it, but sometimes it doesn't work, and I get so obsessed with it that it ruins the song because like I can't move on or whatever, because I'm like, has to be the perfect rhyme, and I can't find the right word. Sometimes it's several words together. Those are the best ones. Those ones are really fun if you can figure that out.
Is that a cello or a bass?
So it's a bass, but he bows it at certain sections. And there, so I
think that sounds really nice.
And that's Chuck Irving, and he's awesome. He's touring with Sons of the Pioneers now. Like since he did this, he got the gig playing for them, and they're a super huge band that's been around for something like 60 years with changing membership.
60
really, yeah, you should look them up. And like they're like bluegrass. They're like kind of bluegrass, like old like Western swing bluegrass, like super fun band. Yeah.
As I look back.
I started this whole journey at this camp, Puget Sound Guitar Workshop, where I wrote this song, and then a year later I was about to go to camp again. Like it was like 2 weeks before the next camp, and it's funny, like camp always feels like a million miles away, and for whatever reason 2 weeks away felt like further away than it had ever felt even a year prior. And I was excited to go, and like I mentioned earlier that like you stay up later and later playing music every night, and so I've had this tradition of staying up and watching the sunrise with a particular group of ladies that I only see at camp. Like we basically never see each other in between because we live in different parts of the world. And it's this wonderful, like the best jam ever of like, you know, lady bonding, and it can be a boys club a lot of the time, as I'm sure you know, playing music with people. And so I'm like, I wrote this song for all these couple of ladies, handful of women that I like play with at camp every year, and who are like inspirations to me as other female players and singers. And we stay up and watch the sunrise, and it feels like, you know, there's nothing can go wrong, like in these moments, and that the year in between can be challenging and hard, and you're like, will I ever see you again? But then in the moment, it's like the only thing.
Yeah, the end of the dobro solo, that like the first time I heard it, I like squealed with joy and surprise.
I can't wait to send that to Peter Langston.
I was like, whoa, what just happened?
She was like, I shouldn't have done that. That was too
Was that
silly.
on
And I was like,
purpose?
yeah. I mean, yes, and he was.
It was
goofing
so
off.
cool.
It's definitely on purpose, and it's being silly and fun, and like we kept that. It was
that was
like
really
all
fun.
the personality was right there in it, and so that's Peter Langston, who's somebody I know from camp also.
Nice.
Who I met there.
For all you listening out there, please go check out the album. It's on Spotify and iTunes.
Yep.
If you're in the Bay Area, you should come to Krishna's album release
Yes.
on March
8th. It's a Sunday from 2 to 4 o'clock, so it's a family-friendly matinee, me being a family person. And it's at the Back Room in Berkeley, and so you can find that on their website or find it on my Facebook page.
I'll be there.
Yeah. It's going to be great. And Sharon Gilchrist with the awesome mandolin solos will be there with us, and I have a great band backing me up, and Susie there to sing back up.
Awesome.
It's going to be great, and a good band opening for me too, which is exciting.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I love the album. I'm gonna keep on listening to it.
Thanks for
now that I know the
revealing
story behind every single song.
a non-country album.
Yeah,
Sort of country
exactly.
songs on there. Solomon's gonna say bye.